Part of them swarmed off from the main congregation. They flew up in a big fight. That's what Baptists always do. They got into it. Part of the congregation went down the road where they chopped that big tree down, just like Baptists will do. Everywhere there's a tree chopped down, they'll build another church house and say, we're the Little Hope Baptists now. Because there's the Big Hope Baptists that they swarmed off of, so they had to be the Little Hope Baptists. And if y'all don't get that, there's something wrong with you. Anyhow, so down at the forks of the road, they'd built a brand new Baptist church that had swarmed off from the one that Amos and Little Betty was members of. Well, the main church took up a collection to buy Amos a suit of clothes to be buried in. Well, the swarm down the road was not about to be outdone, so they took up a collection and bought Amos another suit to be buried in. So here was Amos at his death, the proud possessor of 2 suits. And I had never seen the man in anything but overalls as long as I could remember, but he had 2 suits, and one is blue and one is green. Little Betty decided he would look better in the green suit because he was green-eyed. So she sent him off to the funeral home with the green suit, and when they fetched him back in the coffin, she was standing there looking over in the coffin at him. And the first one that showed up for the setting up, which was going to take place, was her sister Vine. And then Vine and Little Betty was looking over in the coffin at Amos. Vine said, oh God, no. He don't look natural. They ain't got his hair parted on the right side, Little Betty. We've got to fix that. So they went back in the bedroom and come out with a comb and some water and a little Brill cream, and they parted his hair on the right side and smoothed it down and slicked her with that Brill cream. And they stepped back and was looking some more. Little Betty said, you know, looking at him laying there, I didn't know they was going to glue his eyes shut. You can't even see his eyes with that green suit on. It don't make no difference. I believe he'd look better in that blue suit. Now, I don't know how this happened, but Vine, who wore a garment, have y'all ever heard of a garment?
Oh, yeah.
I saw the garment hanging on the clothesline every Wednesday. And it was this big old long tube of a looking thing that had big purple bones on it, the outside, and I thought it would eat you if you got close enough to it. It would just suck you up into that thing and you would disappear off the face of the earth. But she told me that everything that gravity had dropped below her knees, that garment put asunder. So she had her garment on, and so they somehow managed to wall her down into that coffin and jerked Amos up on the side of the coffin. 400 pounds, rocking back and forth. And Vine moved in with the shelf on that garment, and she managed to catch him right on the lip of it. And she said either the garment was going to the floor or Amos was going to the floor. And as far as I was concerned, there was no contest in there. So Amos hit the floor, thunk. And the foundation of the house rocked. Vine said, all right now, we've got him in a place where we can deal with him. And so they wallered around there for about the next 45 minutes, and they managed to get that man's clothes off and then waller him into that blue suit. And then they had a problem that's 400 pounds long and heavy, laying there on the floor, because they could not, even though they circled around and around and around like chicken hawks going around, they could not figure out how to budge 1 inch of flesh of that man off the floor to get it elevated back over into that coffin. Vine said, Lord have mercy, Little Betty, what are we going to do now? Folks is a-fixing to set in the showing up for this year's setting up. And he don't look natural laying there on the floor that way. People will talk. Little Betty said, well, I don't know. The only thing I'd know to do would be to go up to Irvin's, and that's my daddy, and get him to come down here and help us get Amos back over into the coffin. So little Betty struck out and left Vine a-keeping watch. I don't know where she thought Amos was going, but So little Betty climbed up the hill to the house, and she got up there. Daddy's watching the ball game, and I was watching Daddy. Because it was a lot more fun to watch Daddy and hear what he had to say about the ball game than it was to watch the ball game itself. And all of a sudden the door flew open, banged against the wall. And there stood little Betty, kind of weaving back and forth because she was wore out from climbing the hill to the house. Daddy looked over at her and I looked over at her, and she said, "Irvin, you've got to come down to the house and help us get Amos back in the coffin." And my daddy said, "Where in the hell is he, little Betty? I thought he was dead." Little Betty said, "Irvin, you fool, he is dead. Me and Vine got him out in the coffin to change his clothes, and he's laying there on the floor now. We can't pick him up off on the floor to get him back over in the coffin." Daddy said, "Little Betty, damn if you didn't worry him to death the whole time he was living, and you're still after him." But Daddy was a curious kind of feller, so he stood up. And I stood up. I wasn't about to miss this. Down the road we went to little Betty's, got down there. Vine is still keeping watch. Daddy and Vine and little Betty struggled around there for about 10 minutes. And finally Daddy said, "There ain't no way. We can't do it." Little Betty said, "Lord, what are we going to do now?" Daddy said, "I'll go down to the store. There'll be a big crowd down there watching the ball game." Little Betty said, "Lord, whatever you do, Irvin, don't tell nobody." Daddy said, "I won't tell so." Went down to the store, and now that's back when cars had running boards, that run down the side of the car. Daddy showed back up in about 10 minutes with about 10 men. They were hanging on to the running boards, full on the inside of the car. They got in there. This is the gospel truth. Joe Bowman, who always talked like this. He never opened his mouth. He always kept his teeth shut, and he'd talk like this with his teeth clamped down. Looked down at Amos and said, "Now that's a bunch of dead weight." And they struggled around and finally managed, with all of them, and little Betty and Vine helping, they managed to scoop Amos up off of the floor, shuffled him over to the coffin, and pressed him back down into that coffin. But he had sort of spread and settled, and it took them a while, to get him rearranged and squished back together so they could get him back down in that coffin. A little bit disheveled whenever they got done with him. So little Betty fixed him up, combed his hair again, got him slicked back down. Now here's the strange part. Y'all are quick. The men stepped back and started talking about the ball game.
No way.
Me and Vine and little Betty standing there looking over in the coffin. Little Betty said, "Take that tie off of him. I don't know how to fix that thing." So Vine reached in and grabbed her off. And then little Betty looked and patted, and she said, "Well, Vine, now that I look at him laying there in that blue suit, he don't look natural. I believe I like him better than that other suit." And that's the true story, baby, little bit.